Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Robert Adams, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Warrant Officer Cherie Thayers. This evening, we warmly welcome Wing Commander Mary Ann Whiting, representing the Air Force Association. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Visitors who are able to be seated, you may now do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through till the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us during war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant John Eyre Brown, who was killed during the Second World War. John Brown was born on the 23rd of July 1922 in the town of Corn, South Australia, to Ellis and Elsie Brown. He grew up in the company of his younger brother Robert. Their father was a painter, and the family lived in Peterborough in South Australia. John Brown enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force on the 18th of July 1942, just before his 20th birthday. He was trained as an air gunner and embarked for overseas service on the 5th of May 1943. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,500 RAAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, air gunners, and flight engineers who joined Australian and British troop squadrons in Britain throughout the course of the war. While in England, Brown met Hilda Sharratt, and they married in the Peak district of rural Derbyshire in 1943. Further specialist training followed, and eventually Brown was posted to the number 467 Squadron, RAAF, as a flight sergeant. As part of Bomber Command, the squadron flew the 4-engine Avro Lancaster heavy bomber. On the night of the 20th of April 1944, Bomber Command launched a major bombing raid on the marshalling yards at La Chapelle in Paris. Flight Sergeant Brown was the rear air gunner aboard Lancaster POY, which took off shortly after 11 p.m. Number 467 Squadron committed 19 aircraft to the mission, and POY was the only one that failed to return to base. After the war, it was determined that the aircraft had been hit by anti-aircraft fire and crashed in an outer suburb of Paris in the early hours of the 21st of April. There were no survivors. Those killed with Flight Sergeant John Brown were Australians Pilot Officer Kenneth Feeney, Flying Officer James Cameron, and Flight Sergeants Maurice Cutmore, Max Francis, and Simon Emery, along with British Sergeant Richard Lundy. After the war, the remains of Commonwealth servicemen buried in Europe were examined and identified where possible. Brown's body could not be identified, and he was buried in a communal grave with his crewmates in the Clichy Northern Cemetery in Paris. He rests under the inscription, "Among the chosen few, the very brave, the very true." He was 21 years old. John Brown is commemorated on the Roll of Honour at St. Peter's Church in Buxton, Derbyshire. Flight Sergeant John Brown's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, along with some 40,000 others from the Second World War. His photograph is displayed beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant John Eyre Brown, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we the left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Eyre or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, we thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.